Today, we are pulling back the curtain on the world of AI. We're going to get past the shiny presentations and the polished press releases to look at the real, high stakes conversations that are happening right now, among the top leaders in tech and business. So let's just dive right in. So, what you're about to hear is a look inside the top discussions from a totally private expert community. This is the raw, unfiltered stuff, the debates about where AI is really headed. This is the kind of talk that happens when the cameras are off, and believe me, the stakes couldn't be higher. And the only reason we can share this with you is because of something called the Chatham House Rule. Basically, it means people can be brutally honest. We get to hear what's really being said, but we can't tell you who said it. It's all about the idea, not the person. So, with that in mind, let's get into the first huge debate shaping AI. And where does it all start? Well, where it so often does, with money. A lot of money. The biggest question being asked is pretty simple. Is this AI gold rush for real, or is it a massive bubble that's just waiting to pop? Okay, so check this out, because this slide shows this wild contradiction at the heart of AI right now. On one side, you have just insane levels of spending. Tech giants are dumping billions and billions into AI. But on the other side, you have this kind of startling fact. If you take NVIDIA out of the picture, the free cash flow growth for the other huge tech players has actually gone negative. They're spending cash way faster than they're growing it. But here's the crazy part. The market doesn't seem to care. I mean, look at this. When companies like Meta and Google ask for tens of billions in new debt to pay for all this AI stuff, investors are lining up around the block. The demand is just off the charts. It's massively oversubscribed. This tells you that Wall Street still buys the dream, even if the numbers on the page look, well, kind of scary. And that really gets to the core of the whole debate. Are these gigantic investments ever going to pay off? I mean, are we going to see a return that justifies all this spending? Or are we just watching one of the biggest financial gambles in modern history unfold right before our eyes? And the skepticism gets really sharp when you look at the AI-first companies. People in these circles point to a company like OpenAI, which is just burning through billions of dollars, while, let's be honest, most of its users aren't paying a dime. Right now, that massive valuation is basically riding on a mountain of hope. All right, let's shift gears to our second debate, because all this financial pressure isn't happening in a vacuum. There's a new shockwave rattling the entire industry, and it is coming directly from China. $1 trillion. Let that sink in for a second. That's how much value was just wiped off tech stocks pretty much overnight, all because of fears of a new competitive threat from China. This isn't just a little market dip. This is a sign that the fundamental balance of power in AI might be shifting. So why the panic? It's actually pretty simple. All of a sudden, these Chinese models are popping up that are not only incredibly good, but they're also way, way cheaper. We're already hearing stories about US coding tools making the switch. And China's strategy seems crystal clear. Combine cheap, subsidized energy with powerful open source models to just completely undercut the big US market leaders. For many, this feels like a real tipping point. So you see what's happening. A conversation that started out about a potential financial bubble is now turning into a story about a high-stakes geopolitical race for who's going to dominate AI globally. The era of the US being the unchallenged leader, well, it might be facing its biggest test ever. The pressure isn't just coming from the outside. The third major debate we're seeing turns inward, and it's focused on a growing crisis of confidence in one of the most visible companies in AI, OpenAI. This timeline just shows how fast it all went down. A report came out saying OpenAI was trying to get government financial backing for its huge chip deals. The backlash was instant. Critics started accusing them of becoming too big to fail, a company that privatizes all its profits but socializes its risks. Sam Altman came out and denied it pretty quickly, but for a lot of people, the damage was already done. And this whole thing just fed into a much bigger conversation about leadership. In this private community, you started hearing Altman described more and more as a salesman, brilliant at creating hype, but then he'd be contrasted with figures like Elon Musk, who are seen more as engineers at their core. It's a really sharp critique, this idea of substance versus salesmanship. And that criticism led to this absolutely devastating comparison. For some of these insiders, the constant hype about AGI being just around the corner, combined with the massive fundraising and the questions around governance, it just felt like Theranos on steroids. I mean, that's a brutal thing to say, and it really shows you the deep level of distrust that's out there. Okay, so from Silicon Valley, our fourth debate is going to take us across the Atlantic to look at why Europe seems to be struggling to keep up in its global AI race. You've probably heard this a million times, right? Especially from people in US tech. The story goes that Europe's focus on regulation is what's killing innovation and holding it back. It's a really simple, catchy argument. But according to the leaders in this community, that whole argument is a red herring. It's just a convenient excuse that completely distracts from the real, much deeper problems. The consensus here is that the real roadblocks are structural. Think about it. Europe isn't one single market like the US is. It's fragmented. There's a serious lack of big-time risk capital, money from, say, pension funds. And maybe the biggest issue of all is a corporate culture where the huge companies are afraid to buy from startups. They'd rather wait until a technology is totally proven. And according to these insiders, those are the real reasons Europe is struggling to create its own AI champion. All right, for our last discussion, let's move away from all the drama about money, power, and competition, and talk about what might be the most mind-blowing frontier of all, actually using AI to speed up scientific discovery itself. Okay, this is where things get really futuristic. People in the group were sharing these new platforms that can literally act as an AI scientist. And we're not just talking about crunching data. These systems are coming up with their own new scientific ideas, then designing and running experiments to test them, and then making real, actual, validated discoveries. It's happening. And this kind of progress is making people think differently about how we even measure AI. Instead of just testing its crystallized intelligence, basically how many facts it has memorized, the new focus is on something called fluid intelligence. Can an AI solve a totally new problem it has never seen before, using nothing but logic? That, my friends, is a much, much higher bar to clear. Which brings us to this really cool, kind of counterintuitive idea. What if AI hallucinations, the thing we always hear about as this terrible flaw, what if they're actually a feature? Someone in the group suggested they could be like random mutations in evolution. Yeah, most of them are junk, but every once in a while, a hallucination could trigger a creative leap, a totally new idea that leads to a huge breakthrough. Wild, right? So, there you have it. The trillion-dollar gambles, the global power race, the crisis of trust, the struggle to compete, and the incredible dawn of AI-driven science. All of these debates are happening right now, all at the same time. The final question for you, for all of us, is, as money, power, and science all collide, which one of these stories is going to be the one that actually defines what comes next?